It's just a huge honor to bring back to the show for the third time, never been done before, David Harris, who has an entire alphabet soup behind his name. It's CEE is Certified Fraud Examiner, CPA is Certified Public Accountant, CMA is Certified Management Accountant, CFF for Certified Financial Forensics, FCPA for Forensic Certified Public Accountant, and MBA, which is, of course, Money Buys Everything, Masters of Business Administration. He's the CEO of Prosperident, dentistry's embezzlement expert. David may have the coolest job in dentistry. He gets to chase and catch those who steal from dentists. A rule breaker in his youth, David changed his direction and has spent much of his adult life in the world of investigation and enforcement, where he uses his unrivaled ability to understand the criminal thought process to help educate and protect dentists. David is the CEO of Prosperident, the world's largest firm investigating financial crimes committed against dentists. He's a licensed private investigator, a forensic certified public accountant, a certified fraud examiner. He's the author of the book Dental Embezzlement, The Art of Theft and the Science of Control, and over 30 articles in dental publications. In addition to being a prolific author, David is a frequent presenter at regional, national, and international dental conferences, and his vast wealth of experience, coupled with his keen sense of humor, make David both an engaging and entertaining speaker. And of course, I want to do a shout out. I know what every complaint about a podcast like this is. They think that we're going to discuss the details of how to do it. So if we put a course on Dental Town showing exactly how it's done, we just trained your office manager, receptionist, and your wife, lovely up there, who's planning on divorcing you as soon as she's moved $100,000 to Australia. So we're not going to talk about specific examples. But how are you doing, David?
I'm doing great. And you mentioned those 30 articles. I'll say that I'm very proud of the two that I did for Dental Town magazine.
Oh man, that's an honor. My gosh, everybody loves stuff. But you know what? It follows another um thing you see is that people can talk about and critique everything that's wrong with their house or their car or their dog or their neighbors, but when you start talking about them, it gets a little personal, especially if it's about money. Money's a very emotional issue. It just seems like um humans are thinking at their worst, most emotional when it has to do with money and love and things like that. Do you think money is very emotional?
I don't know if money is as much as the stuff that goes with it. And Howard, when I talk to dentists who realize that they've been embezzlement victims, they're devastated. And yeah, unquestionably, money is a factor. The bigger factor for a lot of them is that they chose to trust somebody. They welcome that person into this very special place called their practice. And then this person used that trust and leveraged it to steal from the doctor. The kind of comment I hear a lot when we sort of break the news to somebody is, I can't believe that. I was at her daughter's wedding 3 months ago.
Right.
And now, of course, the dentist is starting to think about how much of that wedding he or she unknowingly paid for.
Yeah, it seems like when the dentists tell you about it, they mention the figure like one time, but then they mention how she was the godmother of my child's baptism, and the
Yeah.
personal pain just dwarfs that. And I think that's why a lot of people like home camera securities. I think most people are buying that stuff because it's not that. I mean, you broke into someone's house, what are you going to steal? A big screen TV and a computer or whatever the heck, or some costume jewelry or whatever. It's the who violated my space, who came in my house. That person needs to be caught and captured and killed. And it's just such an emotional. We had a patient where someone broke into their house, but whoever did it went through her drawers, probably looking for
Yeah.
hidden money. But she didn't know if it was because of the underwear or whatever. But she could not live in the house again. They had
Yeah.
to sell the house. She went and lived with her mother, and she told her husband, "I'm never stepping foot in that house again." I thought, wow,
Yeah.
that's emotional.
I-
And it's probably
Again,
some
it's
14-year-old kid next door,
it's
you
the
know.
emotional thing. And when you look at why people steal, I mean, what motivates people to steal? It's really two things. It's either need or greed. And the greedy thieves are stealing because they covet what somebody else has. They see their friends who own businesses getting ahead faster than they are as a dentist office manager, and it bothers them. Or they kind of construct in their mind this partnership between themselves and the dentist. You know, their logic is the only reason you're a successful doctor is because I keep your chair full for you. And so they sort of build this partnership. Those are the greedy thieves. And then you have the needy thieves, and they're just facing some kind of financial crisis, and they're stealing to buy groceries. And a lot of times, if the cause of stealing is the second factor, you know, this might be somebody whose husband lost their job, or it might be, you know, somebody whose child needs medical expenses that aren't covered by insurance, or, you know, something like that just causes financial crisis. And a lot of times the response of the doctor is along the lines of, you know, if that person had only come to me and told me what their problem was, I would have lent them the money. I would have co-signed a loan for them at the bank. You know, I would have done something to help them. And they're hurt. The doctor is hurt that the person who stole just didn't think enough of the doctor to come to her and say, doctor, I've made some mistakes, or, you know, circumstances have kind of taken my options away from me, and I just don't know what to do.
And that even made a commandment. Well, it was the what was it? The 10th commandment, wasn't it? Thou
What, thou
shalt
shalt
not
not
covet
covet?
thy neighbor's goods. Was that the 10th?
I think in those days they said the neighbor's ass, but, you know, that might not be appropriate anymore.
Yeah, do not covet was number 10. 9 was
Yeah.
lying, do not bear false witness. But another one was steal.
Yeah.
You know,
Embezzlers break about 8 commandments typically.
really. And what tell me more. Tell me that's very interesting, because it doesn't matter if you're religious or not or any of that stuff. It's the fact that this is a 2,000 years of human history. You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
lots
You
of
know, there are just no rules that people will not break in the right set of circumstances. And, you know, they will lie, they will cheat, they will steal, they will make deceptive entries in practice management software, which I'm sure is a commandment. And yeah, you know, they're breaking all kinds of rules.
that is so interesting. And yeah, the 10 commandments. 1, you shall not have false gods. Number 2, shall not make idols. 3, do not use name in vain. 4, remember the Sabbath. 5, honor your father and mother. Then 6, shall not murder, shall not commit adultery, shall not steal, shall not lie or bear false witness against thy neighbor. And you, number 10
Yeah.
is shall not covet thy neighbor's goods. So they're
You know, everything from number 3 on idle. You know, there's a lot of payroll theft going on.
And you mean because people are clocking in or not clocking out, or what do you
Well,
mean by payroll theft?
because people who steal aren't necessarily particular about how they do it. You know, I have a problem, and the solution lies in your wallet, so I'm going to get at it. Whether I steal on the revenue side, in other words, I take patient or insurance payments and steal those, or I put in for hours I didn't work, or, you know, if I have control over payroll, I change my rate of pay without telling you. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You know, the money is all the same color to me. So even the adultery one comes in more than you might think. And the best we've seen a lot of cases where the dentist is really not in a position to do anything about the theft because he or she has also had an extramarital affair with the thief.
I've noticed there's a lot of I think it's kind of like buying a hedge fund, hedging the fund. So I'm stealing from you. Let's say I'm stealing $1 from you, and I'm worried that I might get caught. But I know that if your wife finds out that we're sleeping together, that'll cost you $2. So I'm going to start a hedge fund in your dental office called sleepingwiththedoc.com. And I see that. And it's the same with our prescriptions. They share an opiates together, sex together. Then she starts embezzling them. And then he realizes, well, I can't even solve this problem. I don't even know how to make it go away. I'm sleeping with her, sharing Vicodin, and now she's stealing me blind. I mean,
Yeah,
do you see,
and
do you
she
see
also
that?
happens to know the insurance corners that I cut if I did that. And she also knows, Howard, that when cash comes in, I put it in my pocket and I don't tell the IRS. So yeah, I had a conversation years ago with a thief, and she said to me, and I'll come as close to verbatim as I can. When Dr. So-and-so is trying to decide what to do about this, he should give a little bit of thought to how much a divorce will cost him.
Right.
And of course,
yeah.
you know how this story ends. She walked away untouched, and probably down the street to another dental practice where, she continued her trade craft, which was, of course, stealing and putting the doctor in a compromised position.
But it was all worth it just to get the movie with Charlton Heston. I mean, that
Well,
was the
I've wondered sometimes if infants enjoy infancy as much as adults enjoy adultery, and I
oh
don't
my
know the answer.
my gosh. So do you so right out of the gate, the first thing we've learned is that eagles fly with eagles, turkeys fly with turkeys, and I mean, you notice some people, they'll have like some guy when he has like three best friends. They hang out all the time in the man cave, and all three of them have served time in prison. Some people, they just are attracted to nefarious types of people, and it comes back to bite you and lying, cheating, stealing, things like that. And these 10 commandments where you shouldn't have had adultery with your staff. You shouldn't do all these things with your staff, but you did it anyway. And now it's coming back to bite you in a serious way. So I always thought it was weird that. So let's say you're a man and you're on Earth. There's 4 billion women to choose from. Don't pick one from your business. I mean, come on, you got so many one-liners. What do you call it when someone's sleeping?
Don't dip your pen in company ink.
Oh, I like that, Pen and Company ink. My gosh, I love the CPA one you gave me. That was the best one ever. My gosh, certified constant pain in the ass. At MBA, money buys everything. And don't dip your pen in the company ink. I mean, it's just so. I don't get it. I mean, it's like if you were gonna if you were gonna have an affair on your wife and you're in Phoenix, well, wouldn't you drive to the next town over in Tucson? I mean, you wouldn't walk next door, and I've seen that. Where Dennis getting divorced, and I said, "Well, who's the lucky lady?" And she goes, "Oh, she lives right across the street from me." I'm like, "Oh God, you couldn't go further than across the street from your own house to have an affair." But you've been doing this for so long. How many times have you seen a dentist just get their heart broken?
Wow. I'm just trying to think of how many embezzlements we've seen. I've stopped counting. I'm guessing I'm at 4,000 or 5,000, but maybe I'm off on that. I really don't know.
And then the other thing that's really weird is when I started my office in '87, I still had a pegboard. Still had a
Okay.
pencil. When I caught my only embezzlement I ever caught, it was because a check never came back. I couldn't clear out my check. So finally, I called Chase, which back then was called Valley National Bank, and I talked to my deal, and I said, "Do you know anything about this check?" And she goes, "Well, we actually take a picture of every cash check at the counter, and so I'll look it up and I'll run it over and show you the picture." And she runs it over, and there's a picture of my dental assistant who had just cashed a check for $4,000. So I just kindly walk over to her and said, "What is this about?" And she just breaks down bawling and runs out the front door and never saw her again. I thought, okay,
That was
that's
that.
pretty weird. And that was my only $4,000 incidents, but there was hardly I think that was about the only way she could have done it. But
Yeah.
today, in a digital world, taking credit cards and electronics and internet, it seems to me like technology is making the possibilities scale in how they can steal.
Oh, you are so right. The first investigation I did was 1989, and it was a pegboard office like yours. And for the younger members of the audience, pegboard was the old manual system that preceded practice management software. So it was a manual ledger system. So the first investigation I did was in pegboard. And we still, believe it or not, Howard, about every 2 years, we do a pegboard investigation. In other words, there are still some doctors out there not computerized, and we actually have a section in our internal manual on how to do a pegboard investigation, because the number of us here, I mean, we have about 20 staff in total, and of those 20, probably 3 have worked in pegboard at some point in their lives. So it's kind of a dying art. But you're absolutely right. You know, the practice in those days was a lot simpler than it is now. I mean, the first practice I investigated didn't take credit cards. The only way that money came in was cash or check. You know, there's no such thing as an electronic funds transfer in those days. And a virtual credit card was so far off the radar that nobody would even, know what it was. And it was cash or checks. So the dentist each night would carry the entire deposit to the bank, and you could tell at the end of each day whether or not today balanced. Fast forward to 2021, and you've got money coming in all these different ways. And some of them are visible to the dentist, some of them are invisible. And it's a much more complex financial environment than it was when you started in 1987.
Yeah, it's just amazing. My gosh, I don't even think I could figure out all the ways to do this. So what do you do in a system where there's so many possibilities of embezzlement? I mean, people can come pay on a credit card and they can pay to the account, then they can refund that person, but refund it to their account. I mean, I just keep hearing of new ways all the time.
Absolutely. And it can seem to a dentist sometimes like this is hopeless. And let me assure you, it is not. Um, you have a lot of things you can do. The first thing I'll say, Howard, is that a lot of dentists are far more casual about hiring people than they should be. In other words, they know a lot less about them than with not a whole lot of effort they could. And I'll give you some examples. The percentage of practices that drug test applicants before they hire them is really low, like less than 10%. In the cold light of day, that makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, I can't get a job at a hotel or with FedEx delivering Amazon parcels without a drug test. And neither of those places has the power to prescribe. And yet here, every dentist, whether they have a DEA number or not, they have the ability to prescribe, and they don't even drug test the person who's going to sit there all day passing them sharp instruments.
So it kind of reminds me of the CDC when HIV was discovered in like '87, and then they found out it was in the blood supply, and they didn't have a test for it, but they did have a test for hepatitis A, B, or C. I think it was hepatitis B, and they noticed a huge overlap. Like if you have hepatitis B, it's like 87% correlation or something like that. So are you saying that failing a drug test highly correlates to embezzling?
It correlates to something. Drugs drive a huge amount of crime, and that's true in the scummy neighborhoods in your city, and it's also true in your dental practice. I mean, if somebody is an addict, Howard, it costs more money than they can earn in your practice. Okay, that's just simple numbers. If somebody has a cocaine problem, they will snort up their nose more in a month than they could hope to make as your treatment coordinator or your office manager. So instantly they're in a financial hole. Beyond that, if I were a druggie, where would I want to work? Probably an oral surgery practice or maybe a perio practice, because prescriptions leave those places like candy leaves my house on Halloween. And who's going to notice a couple extra ones? So whether I'm using or I'm selling or I'm supplying my friends, there's a danger in somebody who's got a drug problem. And yet most dentists, who are predominantly healers and nice people and altruists and believe the best in everybody, don't kind of tackle this problem head on and say we need to drug test. The other thing that doesn't happen in a lot of cases is a criminal records check. And I'm going to give you a sobering statistic. 70 million Americans, so that's 1 in 4 adults in the United States has a criminal record. Not all of those criminal records would stop me from hiring somebody, but at an absolute minimum, I need to know what I'm dealing with when I'm looking at hiring somebody, and then make a decision about whether their criminal record is really of interest to me or not. If it's marijuana possession 20 years ago when they were in college, I probably don't care. If it's check fraud 3 years ago, there's no way I should be hiring this person.
Yeah, and that's where it just starts to look ridiculous when you're reading the paper and you find out that Dr. Good was embezzled from in Georgia for all this money, and she had been convicted of it in the next door state of Florida 2 years ago, and you're like,
Yeah.
holy moly!
Yeah. So that's a preventable embezzlement, right? When she gets hired, what's going to happen next is pretty predictable. So lots of things you can do in hiring. And the biggest thing, and again, the one that sometimes gets skipped over, is you've got to talk to former employers. Don't let that go for any reason. And when you phone former employers, don't phone any phone number the applicant gives you. So I'm looking at hiring somebody and they say they work for Dr. Howard Ferran. Google's really cheap to use. So get the phone number yourself, call that number, and then I know I'm talking to Dr. Ferran and not the applicant's uncle who pretends to be you.
Oh, okay, I see.
Really, I mean, not rocket science, just kind of basic applied common sense. So number one is hiring. Number two is, and this one's got an incredibly simple fix. When we look at fraud statistics nationally, so I'm not talking about just dentistry, but when we look at all businesses combined, about 40% of embezzlement comes to light because of what's called a whistleblower. So somebody comes forward and says, I think my coworker over there is stealing. Okay, 40% of embezzlement it's the single biggest source of detection. However, when we narrow the focus to just dentistry, that whistleblower number goes down from 40% to about 9%. Let's ask ourselves why.
Okay, say those stats again. Those are very profound. I don't want to type them in wrong. say stats again.
So when we look at all businesses in aggregate, 40% of embezzlement is discovered because somebody comes forward to the business owner and says, I think you have a problem. When we isolate dentistry alone and we exclude all the other businesses, that number declines from 40% down to 9%.
Wow.
And we see this firsthand. I mean, a lot of times when we're sort of getting close to the end of our investigation, some other staff member will come forward and they'll say, yeah, I thought she was up to something, but that staff member just didn't feel strongly enough to come to the doctor and say, I wonder if you have a problem with my colleague.
Now, do you think it's because, when you say 40% of embezzlement in America, is that American number, Canadian, or world
That's
number?
an American number.
40% of embezzlement is covered by a whistleblower inside your company. In dentistry, that number declines to 5 to 9%. Do you think it's because the average company is a lot bigger? And in a small office, maybe the whistleblower.
It's a small office, but the controllable here is that I don't think that a lot of dentists have done enough to convince people, to quote the line you see in airports sometimes, if you see something, say something. I think that the thing that's easy to fix, and the way to do it's very simple. What I think you need is a whistleblower policy. And you have to catch somebody at the moment when they're trying to decide whether they're going to come forward or not, and make them feel like, first of all, you won't shoot the messenger. Secondly, that you will treat their disclosure to you in the utmost confidence. You need to communicate to people that, first of all, it's my expectation that if you have concerns about a coworker, that you'll come to me. And second, that I'll, when you do, I will not throw you under the bus. And yet very few practices have any kind of established whistleblower policy. I mean, a lot of dentists, if I talk to them about this and say, hypothetically, if somebody came forward in your practice, Howard, and said, I have a concern about a coworker, how would you handle it? Most of them will give the right answer at that point. But it's not enough. You need to catch these people when they're sitting there at 2:00 in the morning and they're supposed to be sleeping. And they're kind of looking up at the ceiling and saying, should I tell Dr. Ferran or not? And unfortunately, far more of them than we would like decide that they're just not going to say anything. So easy fix, whistleblower policy. We have a template, and certainly if anyone in the audience emails me, I'll be happy to share it with you.
And how do they send you an email?
It's that once they hear it, they won't forget it. It's david@dentalembezzlement.com. And the only trick there is spelling embezzlement right. And if you're not sure, Google will help you. The third thing, Howard, is really basic. So there are two kinds of dentists. There are those who know how much money should go into the bank account today and check to see that it arrived. And there are those who don't. Numerically, the first group is probably about 20% of dentists, and the second group is about 80%.
Okay. Say those percentages again. The first group, the second.
20% know how much the deposit should be today and verify that that deposit went to the bank.
And then the 80% do not.
That's right. 80% sort of take on faith that the right amount of money came to the bank.
And then you have another problem that I just gone through. I mean, for security and hacking, and which is a major problem. I mean, they're in dentistry, Smiles Direct Club out of Nashville. Their stock went down from a hacking incident, and it's not some individual hobbyist that's hacking. It's institutionalized from governments that you know of, or China, North Korea, Iran, and Russia. And so they told me, no, I don't want you to have your Chase app on your damn iPhone that has all your accounts and all your money. And that was really nice to be able to check your deposit when you had an app. So do you think that having your Chase app on your phone to be able to check and verify these things is opening up a Pandora's box of a whole nother issues of hacking and that, or how would you recommend?
I'm not aware of a whole lot of hacking that's taken place through iPhone apps. The only place I think you'd have to be careful there is if you're using public Wi-Fi. If you're using the 3G or 4G data from the cell phone companies, from what I understand, and this is not my area of expertise, but from what I understand, you're pretty safe. The other option is use what's called a VPN, a virtual private network that encrypts data as it flies through Wi-Fi. The big danger is public Wi-Fi, because anybody with the right gear can sit there at Starbucks and read whatever, and kind of follow what everybody's doing on their devices.
And I think I would know who was doing that. It'd be the person that just nodded off asleep and fell off his chair out of complete boredom reading my texts and emails. The saddest one that I ever listened to is this man. I mean, he just killed him. He thought there was a cash flow problem, and he couldn't understand where all the money is going, but he wouldn't worry because his wife worked the front. So he finally had someone come look into it, and he didn't even tell her or whatever, but it turned out to be her, and she was moving the money out of the country, because you got to remember, the United Kingdom, the sun used to never set on the British Kingdom, including Canada and the United States, and they have all these islands, Grand Cayman, all these islands, and when he finally caught onto it, she filed for divorce the next day. I mean, she was gonna. I mean, he's like, oh my God. And then it really killed him, because he realized when she started doing it that she'd been planning this for like the last 5 years. It's like this woman was playing along as my wife while moving money to the Caribbean for 5 years.
I got a call once from an orthodontist, and he said to me, 3 years ago, I married a woman from Thailand. And David, what I'm struggling to understand is how come, since I married her, all of her uncles in Thailand are suddenly driving $35,000 pickup trucks in a country where the average income is about $8,500 a year. I mean, that was his overture to me. And, his wife didn't want to ask him for money to send to all the relatives in Thailand, so she just took it.
Yeah.
And it's a hard thing to say, but when you're trying to decide whether the person you should trust is your mother or your wife, your mother will always be your mother. A lot of dentists are on spouse 2.0 or girlfriend 3.0 or whatever. And, if you can picture the conversation, let's say that I am your spouse and I'm about to divorce you. And I go see one of those horrible creatures called a divorce attorney. And the attorney says to me, so your husband, Dr. Ferran, has you on the payroll, right? And I say yes. And that's your only source of income, right? And I say yes again. And what the attorney's going to say to me is, I'm not going to tell you how to do this, but I'm going to tell you what you have to do. You need money under the mattress, because when you drop the bomb on Howard, he's going to take you off the payroll immediately. And while that's happening, you need to find a new place to live. You need to buy groceries. And far from least important, you need to pay me, your blood-sucking divorce lawyer. So what do you think happens next? It's exactly what you described. Somebody feathers their nest and then they break the news to the dentist.
Yeah, those are tough. So I know the way my homies think, and their brain, they're dentists. They know geometry and trig. They're gonna go into game
I've met
theory,
some of your homies.
and they're gonna say, "Come on, man, what are my chances?"
Yeah.
And what are their chances? Let's say I didn't marry a bride from Thailand. I picked one from Russia, so I got that covered.
Good.
What are their odds?
Well, let's talk about that. And our thinking on that is changing a little bit. So the American Dental Association did a study in 2018, and they asked about 17,000 dentists, have you been embezzled from? And 47% of them said, and every question you ask people about embezzlement ends up getting answered with a little bit of a qualification. Everybody says, the number and then that I know of. So 47% of those surveyed said, yes, I've been embezzled as far as I know. And the other 53% said, I don't think I have. They went on and asked the 47% how many times. And about half of the 47, somewhere around 24%, said once that they know of, and the rest were 2, 3, 4, 5 times. Okay. Now, it's interesting because in 2007, so 12 years earlier approximately, the ADA did a similar survey and they asked a whole bunch of dentists, have you been stolen from? And in 2007, Howard, the yeses were 35%. So 2007, they were 35%. 2019, when the second study was published, it was 47%. In 12 years, the percent of dentists who reported being embezzled went up by a third. Okay, so it's changing. Now, the computational challenge here is, first of all, some of the other 53% undoubtedly were stolen from and just didn't know it. And probably some of them were stolen from and for whatever reason chose not to disclose that. So, the 47% is probably understated and we just can't quantify by how much. The second unknown is, of those who haven't been embezzled yet, how many of them will get hit in the remainder of their careers? If you ask me what the real answer is, what my best guess is of what your lifetime probability of being embezzled is, probably around 80%. And in the case of Dr. Ferran, apparently it's 100%.
In the case of Howard Ferran, it's 100% because I had one office and one embezzlement.
Yeah, you lost the $4,000.
Yeah. I did find out later that hers was cocaine.
Yeah.
And she needed an 8-ball. And I guess I know now what the price of an 8-ball on cocaine was in Phoenix before. In 87, 88, 89, it must have been 4,000. But still, the positive is you had the great movie Miami Vice. I mean, wasn't that worth the whole cocaine epidemic just to have Miami Vice? That guy was from Wichita, Kansas, believe it or not, the blonde guy. My gosh, crazy. So it's need or greed. So if it's need, it's what are you putting in with need? Addiction to drugs and gambling and
yeah,
sex
or this is the person whose husband lost his job, or Maybe this is the person going through a divorce and he's trying to survive on, two households with two incomes, where he and his wife used to survive on two households or one household with two incomes. It could be any of those things, but there's some kind of financial mismatch in this person's life, and there's more going out of the house each month than what's coming in. And you can withstand that for a little while. I mean, you eat up your savings, you take the stuff you don't need and sell it on Kijiji. I mean, you borrow from friends, and eventually you kind of run out of those options, and that's when they turn around and start stealing. And they feel bad about it, but they just think that they're out of options. And then you've got greedy thieves, and they just feel like society underappreciates them, and they're stealing what they think they should be given as a matter of right. And they don't feel bad about it.
Yeah, and some of this also kind of fits with the culture of entitlement now. I mean, some people just believe that if you're born, you should be given a Beamer just for existing. And it's really weird when I see surveys of asking kids in high school, what do you want to be when you grow up? And how, like, the top slot was an Instagram influencer. And you're like, okay, well, in my generation, people looked at influencers who did something. They made an airplane. They landed on the moon. They actually had a resume. What is your resume? They don't have a resume. They don't even want to get one. They just want to be an influencer.
Yeah, I hate to let my vintage show here, but millennials have been brought up differently than you and I were. I mean, these were people who were told, from day one that they were special. I mean, Howard, if your parents or mine said, what do you think you are, special? They weren't being complimentary. They were, and I remember when my son was playing soccer, and everybody used to get a medal. It didn't matter how well you played. It didn't matter if your team won. You just got a medal. And I'm not here to re-engineer society, but we're starting to see millennial embezzlement become a real factor now. And entitlement is pretty strong in that group.
Now, I have heard it should be a lot easier to do these background checks because it goes back to the divorce era where you used to have to prove who did something wrong during the divorce or whatever. And then a lot of states just said, like, we don't even want to get into this crap. Let's have a no-fault divorce. Like, you have no-fault car wrecks. I mean, my God, you get in a rear end and they'd try to, they'd spend 6 months trying to figure out who's to blame. And so these states just realize, let's do no fault car wrecks, no fault divorce. We don't give a crap. Let's just settle this fast. And so a huge number of private attorneys lost their entire career. That's all they had done. And the majority of them switched to background information on things like this, on finance background checks, employee checks for Fortune 500. So we've had that shift of resources going from who caused a car wreck and divorce to now this background check. Is that helping at all?
Only if people take advantage of it. In most dentists' mind, and let's give dentists a little moment of free pass here. I mean, I ask, and last time I spoke at the Townie meeting, I asked this question. I had, I don't know, a couple hundred people in my room. And I said, can I please see a show of hands for how many of you enjoy hiring staff? And 2 people put up their hands. And of course, what I wanted to say was liar, liar, pants on fire. But I just nodded politely like they really meant it. Dentists hate hiring. The thought of starting with 100 resumes and getting down to the 5 that you want to short notice, bring in for an interview, or that you want to shortlist and bring into an interview, and then picking the one who's going to be right for you. Most dentists find that overwhelming. So they take shortcuts. And, when you're in any job that you hate, when you get a chance to get out of it, you take it. So, they find somebody who, comes well-dressed, has a nice resume, what looks like good experience. You've heard the saying probably that you don't look a gift horse in the bicuspids. And they just, they hire the person on the spot. And the other phenomenon in a lot of the country is that there have been kind of chronic shortages of people to work in a customer service field like dentistry front desk. So people say to me, well, I post a job and I get one applicant. I mean, there's no point in checking to see whether they have a criminal record because I'm going to hire them anyway. And I say, well, I think you still want to check to see if there's a criminal record so that you know whether or not you have to hide grandma's silver chest.
Yeah, like look at this. Dennis ask on under what section is this? Staff management issues. The title is embezzlement. He says, "Help! What to do with negative history of staff member? I had a colleague call to tell me that my front desk had been involved." Convicted of embezzlement and stealing prescription pads. As far as I know, she has been a model employee for the past 6 months, but I'm being advised to let her go by accountant consultants because at front desk they feel it's not a matter of if, but when it happens. I like her. She's doing a great job. Colleague also warned me that she is manipulative and puts up a great front. There was also drug counseling in the sentence as well as jail and community service. She admitted that doctor from her job history. But now he's asking, well, what should I do now? I mean, she's a model employee. She's been there 6 months.
There's a delusional dentist. That's somebody who's trying to talk themselves out of doing what they absolutely know they have to do.
Yeah, it sounds like she's a perfect 10. And you know what the science is behind a perfect 10? I found this very interesting.
Oh, goodness.
And it's found in millionaires too. But and I've seen this in my practice. All these retires. If you're 13 years older than someone, like if she's 80 and you're 93. That 80-year-old woman is the hottest woman you've ever seen in your life. And I read a deal about millionaires, 100 millionaires, billionaires, the average median age of their younger deal. And we see that with the two richest people right now, Bezos and Gates. They don't care what it costs. They're ready to upgrade to 2.0, wife 2.0 or whatever. But I think a lot of optics cause a lot of delusion. I mean, if someone looks beautiful, they just don't want to believe.
Well, regardless of how this person looks, and let's give our townie the benefit of the doubt and say that's not what he's thinking about. He's simply thinking, or she's thinking, that this is a terrific employee and that it's going to be very difficult to find somebody as skilled as this person. And again, no dentist that I've ever met really loves the hiring process. So just, oh God, I've got to go through that. I've got to post a job somewhere. I've got to go through a bunch of resumes. I'm looking for the jewel in a whole bunch of charcoal. How do I separate the good from the bad? It's daunting. And I think as much as anything, this guy or gal is trying to talk themselves out of, again, doing what you or I or any person with any measure of objectivity would say. There's assuming that what the other dentist said is true, and there's not some hidden agenda on the part of the other dentist. Let's assume that part. There's just no way that this person should wake up tomorrow morning and have a job in this guy's practice. And yet he's looking for townies to kind of validate this unsupportable position that he's trying to sell.
And this is why I love Dental Town so much, because I went with the message board format, because that's what the Jet Propulsion Laboratory uses. That's what NASA uses. Any science place I've ever been, they don't, social media, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. It's LIFO. It's like last in, first out. It's designed to occupy and kill time. But in a message board, everything's organized in database. You do a search on embezzlement, pulls everything up. And on social media, LIFO, if you tell me what I don't like, I just delete you. And you see the balkanization. I've seen so much research on like the last election between Democrats and Republicans on how they interact on Twitter and LinkedIn and all this stuff. They're just two different groups, because if you're saying something I don't want to hear, my God, I know how to fix that. And then you go on Dental Town and they expect that, they're in their office, they're the doctor, they're the king, everybody does whatever they say. At home, they're the breadwinner doctor. And on Facebook, they're just a king. And then they get on Dental Town. And of course, I hear all the complaints, and the bottom line is you just want to say, sorry, dude, but sorry to pop your bubble, but you're not all that in a bag of chips. And someone can absolutely say that. He didn't say that you were just, he didn't say something about you personally, but your idea is clearly disagreeable, and
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
whole different experience when you
Smell
can't
the
find.
burnt coffee and do what you know you have to do.
Yeah.
And quit looking for people to, to give you validation for a reckless course of action.
So basically, what I do based on all your work and all that kind of stuff is that one of the things I believe in is that you should just make it harder to embezzle, and one of the things you do with that is try to make sure that it's going to take at least 2 or 3 staff members working together. Mail the canceled checks to your home. The person who gets the mail makes and enters the checks isn't the one making the deposit, but just kind of break it up so it has to be more in the group thing. Which first I want to remind you that I've seen a lot of times where it was the mother and daughter worked. The mother was the front desk, daughter was assistant, and then those two, their family tribe stronger bonds than the dental office bonds, and those two plot against them. But is that still your main advice? Is to just make it harder?
Make it harder and work on detecting it. So we were talking a few minutes ago about bank deposits, and I said 80% of dentists don't know how much money should go into their bank today, or know but don't check to see that actually went to the bank. Here's how a thief thinks, Howard. If I'm working for you and I plan to steal from you, the first question I ask is, does Dr. Ferran validate the bank deposit? And if the answer to that is no, then it's very easy for me to steal, because all I have to do is divert some of the deposit into my pocket. I don't have to do anything exotic in your practice management software. I can, if $12,200 comes in today, but I can deposit 11,400 and you will not notice that, that's what I'm going to do. So let's start by doing a proper reconciliation, which involves taking what your practice management software says happened and confirming that that's what happened at the bank. The other thing that we'll see is what I think of as a partial reconciliation by the doctor. In other words, the doctor will look at what I think of as the physical deposit of cash and checks, but the invisible part that comes in automatically doesn't get any scrutiny. So if that's what you do, then I can steal just by mischaracterizing. Money comes in a check and I put it in my pocket and I go cash it, but in your software, I say it's a credit card payment. So I always say reconcile or reckless. And that's easy. That won't stop everybody, but it will stop the bottom quartile of thieves from stealing from you. If you are reconciling and I want to steal from you, now what I have to do is a little bit harder. I have to teach your practice management software how to lie. In other words, now when $12,200 actually came in today, I want your software to say that 11,400 came in. That's where we draw the line, and we're not going to educate any of the embezzlers who might be sitting hopefully in the audience waiting for a pearl from me. But it's not impossible or anywhere close to it to make software misrepresent the deposit. So, an easy answer, and again, 80% of your peers don't do this or don't do it fully, is I need to look at reports, ideally ones I printed myself, because as soon as I delegate printing of reports to staff, I abdicate control over the assumptions of those reports. So I need to learn how to print my own reports, and then I need to sit there with the bank statement and see if the amount of money that came in should have. And of course, it's complicated because it comes in over a few days. In other words, if a patient pays by credit card today, that won't be in today's deposit. It might be in Monday's deposit. So you need to do that. The good news is the dentist doesn't really have to do this personally. This is something that can be outsourced as opposed to delegated. In other words, find a bookkeeper. Maybe your CPA firm can help with this. Just don't tell them what I often call CPAs, because they might sour on you. But there's, or if you have a spouse who's interested and knowledgeable, they can do it. But somebody somewhere on a monthly basis needs to make sure that the amount of money that software said came in.
So of all the practice management systems, I mean, Big Henry Schein owns Dentrix, so that's the big 800-pound gorilla. Patterson owns EagleSoft. The fastest growing is actually Open Dental, but do you think any of them are better or worse than the other as far as preventing or discovering embezzling?
Um, all of my investigators, and I have 15 investigators in total, they all have their preferences. And all the softwares you just mentioned, I will have somebody in my team who likes Open Dental or who thinks, that EagleSoft is the best place to investigate. I mean, they all have their strengths and weaknesses. For what we do, it comes down in a lot of cases to the detail in the audit trails. In other words, do they, for example, log only the date of a transaction, or do they log the date and the time? Or do they log the date, the time, and the user ID of the user who made the transaction? That's from our standpoint, that stuff matters. From a user standpoint, I would say that the problem is not the tools, it's the carpenter. So most software, I mean, every mainstream piece of practice management software, including those you mentioned, and we can add SoftEnd and PracticeWorks and Curve Hero and Denticon, we can add a lot of software. All those things have safeguards built into them. And what happens in a lot of practices is then those safeguards get undermined. So an example of a safeguard might be that you are the only person who has administrator privileges. But what happens, Howard, is that, your office manager comes back to you 8 times in a week and needs you to do something in the software because you're the only person who can do that. And eventually you get tired of this because in your mind, you didn't go to dental school to be a software monkey. And you say, you know what, life would just get a whole lot easier if I made my office manager also an administrator in my practice management software, which is kind of like taking the keys to the henhouse and saying, here you go, Fox. The other thing that I see some practices do, and this astounds me, but we see it more than we should. There's one login ID that is shared by everybody in the practice. So the doctor and the recall coordinator are both logging in with the same ID. And as you might expect, that causes some problems for us. But beyond that, I mean, everybody in the practice has administrator privileges at that point, because if there's only one user login, it's an administrator.
That is so amazing. Another dentist asked, he says, manager embezzlement with COVID. I just found out that my manager has been stealing cash. We want to start reopening, but with all the staff on layoff and PPP money coming in, all this chaos, what would you do? Fire right away, be smarter and use them for the time being, then fire? Legal issues with firing during COVID time and needing to have the same amount of staff coming back for loan forgiveness. What do you advise?
Well, what I'd advise that person if they were hearing this conversation is you need to call me. Otherwise, you're going to make decisions based on partial information when there's better information available.
Yeah, but you didn't catch the part where he's a dentist, so he already knows everything about the legalities of a lease, investing in stocks. Yeah. He's in Bitcoin and Tesla, and my gosh, just trying to get Doc to stay in his lane.
Yeah, and again, he's seeking help from his fellow townies, which is kind of like me asking my neighbor, the cardiologist, I have this big filling. Do you think it needs a crown? I mean, we should not confuse experts with people who know 20% more than you do.
That is a nice one. I really like that one a lot.
But yeah, he's kind of like the urban cowboy here. He's looking for love in the wrong places. And there's a reasonable possibility also that the suspect is also on Dentaltown and realizes who this is. So there's relative lack of anonymity there. I mean, I know everybody has a Dentaltown handle, and theoretically you don't know who they are, but I think in most cases you do. So, he may have let a cat out of the bag that he shouldn't have. And again, he's asking a bunch of dentists for help on this when really he needs to call somebody who is an expert, as opposed to, like I say, somebody who knows 20% more than you do.
Yeah, that is not good. An expert is not someone who knows more than you or 20% more. An expert is an expert. But you know what's really weird in um my gosh, if I had to there's so many trends I can say I've noticed in, the first 58 years of life, but it just seems like trust is just down the drain. I mean, I'm in Arizona right now and they're recounting the ballots from the last election, and you're just like, I mean, dentists agree with that, oral surgeons. I mean, I can't believe how my dentist friends, it's like, okay, but I mean, there's can you show me a mathematical way that this would change the election? I mean, what could happen out of all this? I mean, it's so it's kind of like are we living in the time of, is it the death of facts? I mean,
Yeah,
literally
it is.
people
I mean,
just
and let's keep talking about the townie who's asking that question. I mean, there are facts there, and he just doesn't know them. So one question of fact is she really stealing or not? And at this moment, he's speculating on that. I mean, he said he has concerns about it, or he thinks it's happening, but he doesn't know it's happening. And my job ultimately is to be the determiner of facts. So if we investigate in that case, which can be done stealthily, so she would have no idea that it's happening. If we investigate it, at the end of that, he would know. And he can make a decision. If she's stealing $100 a month and he says, okay, I can tolerate that. I mean, it wouldn't be my recommendation, but if he says, I'm fine with that, then he can decide to hire her. If she's stealing $4,000 a month, then it might be a different decision. But he's and it's an exhausting process, Howard, when you start saying, when you start trying to assume enough to solve the problem. Well, let's assume she's only stealing a little bit. You don't have to assume. I mean, this is like the dentist who doesn't believe in x-rays and says, I'm just going to fit this crown based on what I can see above the gum line. And that's gone wrong more than once. Or the guy who says, we're not going to perio probe because, I can just look at somebody's mouth and guess the depth of their pockets.
I want to say something else though. You said that an expert is not someone who knows 20% more than you. And I'm just blown away by how many dentists, and I'm not talking about using a CPA of like the National Association of Dental CPAs or whatever, where they only do dentistry. But I understand their method. They went to church, they asked the pastor, they needed a recommendation for a CPA. So they got someone from the same tribe, the same church, and think he's great. And then, that guy only, he's like the only dentist that the CPA does. He has no other dentist deal. But the dentist asks him a question like, should I buy a CAD cam? What stock should I buy? What, all this business advice. And I'm like, who do you think this person is? I mean, why are you asking all these specific personal questions to a CPA who, and that's what you just said. An expert is not someone who knows 20% more than you. An expert is someone who's an expert.
But by the way, more than you.
But by the way, don't you didn't you say last time on the show that if someone's worried or concerned about anything, they can just call you up and then you log into their practice management system and then you can audit it all the way from Canada?
Yeah, it's a little more advanced than that. And to be clear, our head office is in Canada. Most of our investigators live in the US.
Those are the ones stealing from you.
92% of 92% of our revenue comes from the US. So, our head office is Canadian. I know I sound Canadian, and before you ask me, yes, I do play ice hockey.
Oh my gosh, that's the most anti-tooth sport there is.
Yeah, I know, and these are all real. So I'm doing well, but yeah, we function in the U.S. Our process is a little bit more sophisticated than that. If you called me and said, David, I have concerns about my practice and I'd like you guys to take a look. What we actually do, Howard, is we copy the data files from your practice management software. And then my IT guys build a clone of your software in our computer lab. And all of our exploration we do in the clone as opposed to the live stuff that's in your practice. And that does a couple of things for us. First of all, if this is a crime, at the end of it, we're going to want evidence. And we need to be able to produce the software exactly as it was when we analyzed it. Second, it keeps that firewall between us and your team. I mean, if we were remotely logging in, there's a pretty good chance they discover it. When we clone the software, they'll never know. And third, it gives us static data to work from. And as an analyst, it's always easier to look at data that's not wiggling underneath you while you're trying to make sense of it.
Yeah, that's a paramecium you're thinking about in biology, not accounting. But I know my homies. I know a lot of them are going to say, well. Then I just gave David a chance to steal from me. So now I'm not sure if my office. But explain that in detail, because I know that's what he's thinking. He's thinking, well, hell, I'm not sure if my office manager would, but hell, now David in another country can do it.
Well, we have no access to the incoming funds in the practice. We don't have the checkbook. We don't have we don't have the insurance payments coming in. And if we tried to redirect your insurance payments and have Humana send checks to Canada, they'd flag that pretty fast. So no, we're looking at after the fact entries in your software. And the other thing is, I've been at this for 32 years. We've got a fair-sized company with a lot of good people. The last thing I would want to do is jeopardize that,
right?
By sticking my finger in a dentist's pocket somewhere.
And the reputations. I mean, dentistry reminds me of a small town. If you grew up in a small town, I mean, you burp on the east side, someone on the west says, "God bless you," and dentistry is such a small industry that it would ruin your business. And by the way, congratulations on having 15 investigators. I mean, you're just, that's impressive, man. So from someone who has an MBA, I know how successful you're doing, and congratulations on that. That's
well, thank you. And they all have dental backgrounds. I mean, everybody who works at Prosperident has come from dentistry and typically has spent their life in dentistry. So some of our investigators used to be practicing dentists. Some were office managers, software trainers. One of our investigators used to be a hygienist, which on the surface wouldn't seem to be a fertile training ground for what she does now, but her mind just works the right way for us. So she's been a real jewel.
So I gotta ask. We went over an hour. That was such a fast hour, but I still got some overtime questions for you, if that's okay.
Let's do it.
We have 12 specialties. Anything stand out about specialties? I mean, there might be an endodontist thinking this is a general dentist problem, and my general dentist might be thinking this is an orthodontist problem. Do you see anything in the 80-20 between specialists and general dentists?
I'll say a couple of things there. First of all, some of our investigators are also specialists. So, for example, we have an orthodontic group who investigate orthodontic embezzlement. We have somebody who does pediatric dentistry. And then we have a pool of generalists who cover endo, perio, pedo, and general dentistry. We haven't really had a call yet to investigate public health dentistry, but which is one of those 12 specialties, but it may happen sooner or later.
Pediatric dentistry.
What's that?
Pediatric dentistry. That obviously that's the kid that's taken 2 toys out of the basket instead of 1. I know.
That's it. I mean,
I know that's the kid.
And man, when you catch those kids, that feels so good.
And what do they always say? Oh, I'm getting one for my brother.
Yeah. Here's the thing. If I steal, it is driven by my circumstances and not yours. So, I'm in financial trouble or I'm that greedy person. I don't stop and say, but I actually work in a perio practice, so I can't steal here. Let me just quit my job and I'll go apply at a general dental practice because I could steal there. I mean, you can steal anywhere. Any dental practice is vulnerable. So The statistics are driven more by the probability that you hire somebody who, in the right set of circumstances, decides to steal from you than anything to do with what residency you did after you were a general dentist. The only thing that sticks out a little bit to me statistically, and I'm challenged to explain it, is that orthodontists seem to get hit a little bit harder than everybody else.
And why do you think that is?
I've wrestled with that and never really come up with a satisfactory answer. I think my interpretation is that they're a little bit better at detecting it than everybody else. In other words, I don't think it's necessarily that more happens, but maybe that more of it gets caught.
So you said in a post, if a dentist suspects embezzlement, no, this is someone else. Kevin said this about, he says, if a dentist suspects embezzlement, the first thing to check is A, patient refunds, B, no cash payments, C, unapproved adjustment write-offs. Better yet, they should contact David Harris at Prosperident. How do you say it? Prosperident?
Prosperident, yeah, 3 syllables.
Yeah, Prosperident. Do you agree with that? That if you're suspecting embezzlement, check for patient refunds, no cash payments at the deposit, unapproved adjustment write-offs. Well, if my homie decides to call you, what would that cost? If he
Well,
wants to
to
know
call me will cost nothing. If he decides to hire me, then it will set a price depending on his situation. You know, how big his practice is, what practice management software is using, things like that. Most of the time, Howard, we can give somebody a fixed price in advance, so they're not at risk for what I would call the runaway investigation. You know, nobody wants to think that something's going to cost $7,000 and they get a $12,000 bill. That won't happen with us. You know, to answer your question about what I think of that, first of all, you know, Kevin is a supremely wise man, and I agree with everything he says, but with one little tiny caution. Let's say, Howard, tonight on your way home, you're walking from your car and you see a dead body on the sidewalk. What do you do next?
I always coached all my boys, just call 911. Don't go find them. Don't just call for backup help first.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you don't go into the open door of the jewelry store next to the dead body and look for the guy who did it. And when somebody says what something like what this townie said, that's a crime scene. And I always get a little bit nervous when amateurs want to trample over my crime scene, because they will do things that aren't necessarily reversible. They may destroy evidence. They may contaminate the evidence. They may alert the suspect to the fact that she's a suspect, which is a monumentally bad idea. You know, so you've heard the saying that fools rush in, and unfortunately, sometimes that happens. So, you know, what I tell a dentist, and the other thing they want to do, and I was speaking with somebody this morning like this, and she said, you know, this was a dentist who called me and said, yeah, I think somebody's tampering with my payroll. And, you know, I've seen all these changes, and, you know, I've seen in my practice management software where people have been amending their timesheets. And, you know, I stayed really late last night and I figured out how in EagleSoft to change it so that they can't do that. And she called me early in her morning this morning before the workday actually started. And I said, okay, here's what I need you to do right now. Hang up, get in your car, drive to work as quickly as you can. And when you get there, undo what you did last night. Because I don't want those people to see a change. I don't want them to know that they're about to get caught, because if they have been stealing from you and they think that they're about to get caught and they think the consequence of that is going to jail, the list of things that they will not do to stay out of jail can be pretty short. So, you know, we don't want to tip people off prematurely. And also, let's consider the other possibility. If this townie is wrong about what's going on, the last thing he should have done is gone to this employee and said, I don't trust you. Because that'll ruin the employment relationship irreparably. So we need to think of this and treat this like a crime scene. And like I say, I just do not want well-intentioned dabblers sticking their fingers in it.
Um, I want to change subjects. I get a lot
Okay.
of there's a lot of emails and texts on this. Um, the world's a big place. Only 1 out of 20 humans live in the United States. 19 out of 25 don't. In the United States, it was the first time they were hit with this virus. People got to remember that it was America's first rodeo with this coronavirus. And Asia, they got it in 2012, and they did a lot of work that helped them in round two. But in America, they might have bumbled and fumbled the ball several times, but man, when it came down to actually making a vaccine that works and rolling it out, I mean, it's got I got both shots. Everybody I know got both shots. Down here in Arizona, it looks like the pandemic's over. Everything's opened up. I took my grandkids to a movie last Sunday night. I mean, and had popcorn. I mean, it's over. Restaurants,
Yeah.
it's all back. But we keep hearing up in Canada that there's a. I read one news deal that said one area of Canada had the highest as a percent in the whole world. So is that typical U.S. media hype, or is there something going on up in Canada with the pandemic?
No, there's some truth to it. And what's happened with us is that we were a little slower with vaccines than the US. And the big reason probably is that we don't manufacture vaccines at all. I mean, we have no, we're not a big enough country to justify our population's about 35 million. So, the state of California, think of it as.
Right.
And we just didn't have enough size pre-COVID to have a vaccine manufacturing capability. So all of our vaccine comes from somewhere else. And of course, what we ran into very quickly is called vaccine nationalism, where, India was shipping us vaccines, but then when their COVID flared up, they just said, well, we can't do that anymore. So they stopped shipping the vaccines that were coming from India. And, we were getting stuff that was made in Belgium, and same thing. They said, we've got to look after the Belgians first. And after that, Canada, you're next, because you all love our waffles. So we were a little slower. Where we are now is about 30% of our population have had the first dose, and probably 8% have had the second dose. I had COVID. I was the first person in my state to have it. Of course,
Seriously?
I got it, at a dental conference.
Oh,
it was
that's right. Because you live on an island, right? You're in Halifax.
Not quite. We're in a peninsula. There, it's joined to the rest of Canada by a piece of land that's about 20 miles wide. But I had COVID and I've been vaccinated. So the good news is I'm never washing my hands again.
Wow. So, how was your case with COVID? Was it a mild case, severe case?
It was almost nothing. I was sitting here at my desk, the same place I am right now, on a Thursday night, and I had a little bit of a headache and some muscle ache, and I felt a little bit of temperature, and I just, because COVID was in the news. This was March 17th last year, I think. COVID was in the news, and I just looked online at the COVID symptoms, and I was looking at them, and I sort of said, yeah, I have that, and I have that, and I have that. And, I phoned the public health folks here, and I told them about my travel history, because in the 2 weeks before that night when I was sitting here, I'd been to the West Coast twice. I was in California twice. I was in New Orleans once, and then I was home. So between my travel schedule and my symptoms, they said, we're testing you. And an hour later, I was sitting there getting the swab up my nose. And then the next day they confirmed that I was COVID positive. But, in those days, they didn't really have the concept of isolation like they do now. So, the public health folks here told me, you can walk your dog, you can, you just need to keep away from people, but you can go for a hike, do whatever. So he and I would go out for 5-mile hikes, and, just out in the woods where we wouldn't meet anybody. And of course, my dog's looking up at me, because I would get a little bit tired doing this, and he'd look at me and like, is that all you got, old guy? But Yeah, it was mine was mild, and if sadly, I know that not everybody has the same experience. But
So I'm sorry to be ignorant. I'm not I don't know all my geography, but I could have sworn that was an island. But you're saying that's not an island, Halifax, that it's connected by a little piece of land, and it's
yeah,
actually a big.
we're connected to the next province over, which is called New Brunswick. Um,
And who owns Prince Edward Island? Which, by the way, that was one of the first prank phone calls I ever made in my life. You would call up Skaggs and say, "Do you have Prince Edward's in a can?" And they'd say, "That's a chewing tobacco." And they'd say, "Well,
yeah,
we do." And we'd say, "Well, you better let him out because he can't breathe." And then you'd hang
yeah.
up. And
Well,
so, how did that get associated with chewing tobacco clear up north in Prince Edward Island?
I don't know. Yeah, here one of the brands of flour is called Robin Hood. So what you used to do was you'd call the grocery store and you'd ask if they had Robin Hood by the bag. And if they said yes, you'd say whatever came to your mind next. Um,
So, back to Canada and coronavirus. Is it having impact on the dentist, or is this just an unfortunate event? I mean, is it gonna? You think it'll lead to another closing or a double dippy economy effect? Or what does it look like now?
we have 10 provinces, think of them like states. They're in very different places right now. And one province, which is called Alberta, and is the second closest to the Pacific Ocean, so it's like north of Montana, Wyoming. It has about 6 million people, and COVID seems to be out of control there. And these guys have a very much a frontier mentality, and they had a flare up probably 6 weeks ago, and they just didn't have the political heart there to shut down, to sort of do all the things you have to do to keep people apart, close schools, close restaurants. They just, they're very, if they were in the US, they all would vote for Trump.
Yeah.
Okay. They're very much into less government and less, less kind of interference in people's lives. So, to their culture, this is, the COVID is somewhere between a hoax and a harmless thing, and their case numbers have gone crazy. And where I live, we've had very few. We've had a little flare up in the last week, and nothing like the numbers in Alberta or Ontario, which is our biggest province. But we've had a little flare up here, and the politicians where I live are very decisive. I mean, they don't fool around. So they closed for 2 weeks. They closed restaurants and they closed schools, and basically all sort of non-essential businesses. So dentists not really affected. I mean, I was in my dentist today for a crown prep, and it was more or less business as usual.
Huh.
But
But I'll just end on this. I listened to podcasts of these virologists, and they said that, think about it, classic evolution, like, humans, they only have a generation about every 20 years, maybe 5 times a centuries, but these viruses do it in 20 minutes.
yeah,
And they're saying that imagine that you put a fence up, and almost all the viruses could not run and jump over the fence.
but one
But
can.
but one can, and well, that's the only one that's going to reproduce and have children. And that they said that when they study all the pandemics, the second round was the knockout punch. It was never the first round. And they say that all these masks, all these PPEs, all the washing the hands is just making sure that the only virus left is Usain Bolt, and who's going to run 10 times faster, jump higher than anyone ever imagined. And then when all the babies are the children of Usain Bolt, they're gonna beat you in the race every time. So do you think that's coming, or do you think
Yeah,
the
that's
vaccine
that's
will
the
bury
problem
it?
we're having here now, because the virus that is, about certainly where I live, 60% of our cases now are the B117 virus, which is the one I think that came from Brazil. I forget which one that is, but it's far more contagious than the original strain of COVID, and it also seems to be hitting younger people. In other words, when you look at the average age of hospital admissions here for COVID, it's been falling. And actually, we had a 20-year-old die here the other day. We've only had, I think we've had 65 deaths out of a million people. So it's, we've been pretty gently treated by COVID, but the hospital admissions are getting younger and the deaths are getting younger, and that's the thing that's really got people concerned.
Yeah, tough times. I never ever thought I would be living through a pandemic. I can't believe when I read that book clear back at Creighton about the Spanish influenza, I had never even crossed my mind that that would be something I would live through. But still, I'm an optimist. I mean, I would rather be attacked by another species, a virus. I mean, everybody's talking about it's killed 3 million people. Remember, the last time humans started killing each other in World War II, they killed 70 million people. And I understand why people are conservative anti-government because when China and Russia each nationalized their agricultural industry, you had two famines. I mean, huge famines that killed countless tens of millions of people. So you can't read a history and say, government, aren't they always our friend? And it's like, I don't think I didn't find that chapter, but so the chapter of human history is my gosh, that's why you need checks and balances, because it just takes one crazy ass lunatic to turn the whole thing upside down. But I wish you luck up there. I'm glad you survived COVID. These stories are amazing. And the bottom line is, I'll just say this again, stay in your damn lane. I'm telling you this all the time. You go sign 10-year leases in a strip center, and you didn't even get a real estate attorney to sign the lease. And then you show me the outcome is, Doc, I know you're smart. You got A's in math, and applied math is physics, you ASAT. Applied physics is chemistry, you ASAT. Applied chemistry is biology, you ASAT. I get it, you're smart. In dentistry, you don't know shit about anything else. So don't parlay your dental experience into thinking that you just picked Bitcoin, which is a store of value. And by the way, let me just, I keep getting pushback on my Bitcoin comments, so I'll just be a little more clear. Bitcoin is a store of value. It's not an exchange medium. Nobody, you don't know anybody in your life that went to the grocery store and bought bread on deal. But I think the best example that explains what I've been saying is inflation's back, the house prices, inflation's back, is the country of Iran. Iran is the best case model. Due to international sanctions, they can't move their money around and do all these other things, but their government, remember, the government has every government, including ours, has a crazy fiscal policy where they just want to keep spending. And a lot of people say, well, we're only at the same debt levels after World War II. Remember, World War II, the people bought war bonds with their own money that the government paid back a nickel a dollar a year. There was no tax collection for these last stimulus rounds. This is pure counterfeiting, and the monetary, and don't blame it on the Fed. The Fed monetary policy has to accommodate this stupid fiscal policy, and if that means expanding the quantity of money supply, that's what they have to do. I mean, when the government says we're going to spend $1, their job is that they have to give them the dollar, and if they can't collect it, yeah, there has to be $1. So right now, 1 in every $4 US dollars in circulation has been printed in the last year, thus the decline of the dollar value. But Iran, they don't have any options. So what are they doing? Their government's doing the same thing, counterfeiting money, printing money from a monetary fiscal policy. So what are they doing? They're moving their money into Bitcoin and the Iranian stock market. By the way, the Iranian stock market is the #1 performing stock market of the year. And so you would say to yourself, well, if they're under sanctions, how could the value of their companies increase 200 to 300%? Because that's not why the stock went up. Our equities are going up because people say, well, I don't want to hold it in cash when the government's running a Xerox machine.
And I'm going to buy shares of something.
Yeah, and Bitcoin, they're not gambling. They're just saying, I don't know where to put my money, but I'm not going to put it where the U.S. government just hits print and prints out another $1 trillion. So what they're doing is they're buying other things. But and I also want to say this: in 1980, when I graduated from high school, that was the worst economy I'd ever seen. Interest rates were 20.5%, unemployment and inflation were double digit, and that made I graduated in '87, which was followed by Black Monday, and then there was the Y2K, then there was Lehman Brothers in 2008, and I'm telling you, the 1980s thing was the worst I'd ever seen, and it's it's back. I mean, you have inflation flying up everywhere, and I'll just finish it on the last story. Let's say that I do believe David is wrong about one thing. and that is Halifax is a damn island. I've always known it was an island. My brain had it filed away under huge, cool islands east of Canada. But let's say it was an island, and Dave was the only one that lived there. And his total productivity for a year, he made 1 bottled water, and the government had $1 in circulation. So one person's total productivity, a deal of water, $1 in circulation. That soda, that water is worth $1. The government comes along, prints another dollar. We didn't change the factors of production. We still just got Dave. He still just made 1 bottle of water, and now the bottle of water is $2. Milton Friedman from University of Chicago has more Nobel Prize-winning economists than anyone. He got a Nobel Prize for this. That inflation is from monetary policy. His wife Rose was a PhD. I mean, they're just classic. And now we live at a time where the New York Times is running articles that Milton's Friedman's dogma is wrong and it's fallen apart and didn't hold up the history of time, and the government's printing trillions of dollars. And I just want to tell you, I saw the 80 crash. I lived through it. I lived through it in 87. I lived through it in 2000. I lived through it in 2008. I'm in the middle of a movie I've seen 4 times, and I'm not a fearmonger. I don't give a shit. I survived and made a shitload of money through the first 4. I don't care. To me, it's just a movie. I don't like watching horror films. I would much rather watch a documentary on Britney Spears and Madonna or something, but my gosh, I've seen this movie 4 times. I know how it ends. It's going to end real badly, and no big deal, because as soon as it hits rock bottom, you'll start the climb, and then 10 years later there'll be another one, which is why the Austrian-Hungarian economists business cycles. I mean, the reason we have business cycles because crazy monkeys who lost their tails make all these fiscal and monetary decisions. So it just is what it is. And but again, it's a lot better. I'm really glad that my big exogenous shock in my career time was from a virus. It's just heartbreaking when it's another tribe of people coming over to kill your own women and children. I mean, that's so. I'll take an attack by a mosquito. By the way, mosquitoes. Humans are 200,000 years old, and half of every human that ever lived died from malaria. So mosquitoes killed half of all the humans to date. But Dave, thanks so much. You're the only one who's been invited back for a 3rd time. Thank you for all you do, and just call him. If in doubt, when you have an intuition and you're wondering, act on it. I mean, you're wondering this, and it's just a phone call away. Just call, say the email one more time. David at dentalembezzlement.com.
And if anybody needs our phone number, Howard, it's 888-398-2327.
All right, man. Well, thanks for all you do.
It's been a pleasure, and I can't tell you how honored I am to be your first triple.
Absolutely. Just don't tell Datola, because then he's going to want to come back on to tell you.
Well, Datola's entertaining. I hope you bring him back, because he's great to watch.
All right, man. Have a good day.
You too, Howard.